Start the recording. And for all of the students joining us on the recorded version of this live session, I hope you're doing well. I was just telling the people that are in attendance at the live session now that it's been a tough quarter, I think, for a lot of people. It's always tough to get going, but you know, be proud of what you've done and set yourself a plan to make sure that you meet your goals in the next 2.5 weeks, and don't hesitate to reach out if I can help you with anything. A lot of students have been very good about staying in touch with me and asking for little clarifications or you know, to help get going on an assignment or a particular question, and that's always welcomed. I always love hearing from students, and hopefully the feedback that I've been giving you has been helping somewhat. So today I'm just going to do a quick little session here. We're into Unit 5 of 7. And Unit 5 is not a particularly long one. We're changing our focus more from Western European Revolution and Age of Conquest, etc., and moving over to hopefully what you find a more sort of North American focused perspective, and looking at Iroquoian societies as an example of an indigenous population that's got its own culture and diverse cultures actually between many of the groups, and just the approach that they take to leadership and how it differs from a lot of the systems that we've looked at so far in Western Europe, you know, starting with feudal system and then working our way through you know, monarchies into constitutional monarchies and then into democracies. We've spent a lot of time looking at the development of leadership and governance of nations in Western Europe. So we're going to try and shift over and focus a bit more on a North American perspective and indigenous perspective. As I have mentioned before, I took this course over from someone else, so their materials are great, but they do tend to focus, and the textbooks that we've been given and whatnot do tend to focus a bit more on eastern part of Canada. So we're talking about Iroquoian societies and tribes within that confederacy, which you know, definitely gives us fodder to discuss and definitely gives an indigenous perspective on leadership. But it's important to realize that not everything will transfer perfectly over to the indigenous groups that we have in the plains. It's a different, you know, it's a bit of a different environment. There's different resources, there's different organizations, there's different proximities to other groups, say in the northeastern U.S. So there's you know, sort of just a different approach in several ways and different customs than what you might see if you focused more on you know, Plains Cree, Lakota, Dakota, or up north, you know, with Inuit people, Dene. So just to be aware of that. It doesn't make it any more or less valuable a perspective, but you will find that as you move forward in History 20, and definitely with a huge focus in Canadian history in your History 30 course, that there's much more of a focus, I would say, on sort of the Central Canada plains perspectives. So just be aware of that. And if you take any Indigenous Studies courses or whatnot, you will get a lot more of the plains in Central Canada perspectives as well. So you will receive certainly more opportunities to learn in those areas, but I just wanted to put it out there up front if you notice that, hey, we're kind of talking about groups that are around what we know as you know, Southern Ontario and the Northern United States, and that is true. I'm going to go into just sharing my materials here, and we'll just have a quick look at a quick overview of Unit 5, and then I'm just going to go through the very briefly where you find the learnings. And in this one, it's a bit more oriented toward reading than other units. Other units, we've had a lot of videos, a lot of you know, crash course videos and YouTube videos and things like that. You'll find that this stuff is a little bit more from the textbook, but you know, that's a way that we have to work on our learning as well. Not everything can be audio visual. You do have to demonstrate that you can process written information, graphics, and make sure that you can demonstrate your comprehension and your learning to your teacher through a variety of learning means. There's been a lot of emphasis in education for for the last 20 years about ways of knowing and ways of learning, and some of it has been debunked. Some of the things that we thought originally might be true are not necessarily true, and some of the research has indicated that differing learning styles do make a huge difference. And I'm not going to fall on either side of the argument of that, but I will say that just as my experience as an educator and as an adult, the reality of the real world is that you're going to have strengths, I think, in certain areas. You're going to have preferences for the way that you want to consume and comprehend and analyze information. But it doesn't mean that you're not going to have to use those other styles of learning, auditory or processing things aesthetically, or not aesthetically, kinesthetically, where you're moving, learning through moving. You're going to need in your adult lives to learn in multiple ways. And you are likely going to be stronger in certain areas than others, in certain learning styles than others, but that doesn't mean that you never are going to have to learn from something you read or from some sort of movement-based learning exercise. Though they all come into play in adulthood, so it's important that we work all our skills, and this is another one of them. So I'm going to share this screen, and we're going to get the little tunnel to infinity in a second here. There we go. Video. Man, that's unfortunate. Well, sorry about that, folks. I'll try to do the brief summary as I had it. Can you see this right now? The coming of Peacemaker. Okay, excellent. And the last thing I said, did you hear anything about how I was talking about this is a perspective from Southern Ontario, Northern United States? Did that stuff come through? Or was all of that off camera? Okay, yeah, unfortunate. Sorry about that, folks. I'll try to do instead of talking for 20 minutes, I'll try to do the quick version. The quick version is that a lot of the learning in this unit is going to be based on textbook readings. And I know that is not the preferred learning method for some students, and that's okay. The reality is that you will have strengths with certain types of learning and difficulty with other types of learning. Everybody's different, but the reality of the adult world is that at times you're going to have to use every type of learning style. There's going to be learning that you're going to need to do on the job or in school that is auditory. There's going to be stuff that's visual, audio-visual. There's going to be stuff where it's written and you need to demonstrate you can comprehend, you can analyze, you can interpret information in written form, and also kinesthetic learning where it's based on movement and experience sort of in the real world. Everybody has areas where they have strengths and areas where they have weakness, but it is important that you do expose yourself to multiple types of learning, because it's just going to be part of your life as you grow into whatever career or experiences that you pursue after school. So I mentioned that, and then the next thing I went on for a bit is how the information that we're going to be using and the society that we're going to be learning about, the Iroquoian society, is a lot of the learning is focused in Southern Ontario and the Northern United States as we think of them. And we need to sort of remember when we're going through this proper context, in that those lines that divide Canada and the U.S. and Ontario from Quebec and the northern U.S. states, those are colonial inventions. They're relatively recent. They're from the late 1700s into the late 1800s, most of them. And Indigenous people of the land have lived there since time immemorial, thousands of years. So let's just remember that those lines aren't necessarily all that meaningful in the message, that in the sort of grand message that we're going to look at, and the values and the leadership structure, social structure, and social goals for the Iroquoian Confederacy. So just kind of keep that in mind. Let's just forget about the maps and whatnot. We spent a lot of time focusing on the events in Western Europe, particularly with leadership from the times of the feudal systems up through Age of Conquest, absolute monarchies into constitutional monarchies into democracy. So we've seen a lot of changes in Western Europe, but we haven't focused a whole lot of attention on what's happening in sort of what we consider now as Canada. So I do realize that this information and the information from the text that was selected for the class is a bit more focused on Eastern Canadian and Northeastern US territories, that general land area there. But I did want to say that not all of the sort of specific cultural practices and viewpoints are going to transfer over, say, to Indigenous areas in the Plains area that we live in, the treaty land that we live in. Cree, Lakota, Dakota, up north, perhaps Dene, Inuit, if you go farther north, and other groups of Plains people of the Plains. That doesn't make it wrong, and that doesn't make it right. It just makes it different. So you may notice as you go to different history classes, History 20, and certainly Canadian history, and if you take Indigenous studies, that there will be more of a focus, I think, on people of the Plains. So you will have the opportunity for that learning as well. I was just going to flick through the learning materials really quickly. Again, sorry I did this already, but we'll do it again. We're in Unit 5, and some people are actually near the end of the unit. Some people are in the middle. Some people are at the beginning. But it's something that we hadn't discussed yet. And this chapter focuses on the Iroquoian Confederacy and starts out specifically with the Haudenosaunee people. And one of the main messages is about the coming of peacemaker, a being that traveled between groups of Indigenous people and tried to spread the message that peace is the most important. It's the cornerstone of society, and it's the thing that we should all strive for. That people have spent too long and generally spend too much of their time finding ways to abuse and kill each other, where our central goal should be coming to consensus and finding peace, and thinking of things, the great law, as it's termed, being peaceful coexistence and cooperation with other groups to try to make sure that everybody's needs are met and that conflict is minimized. The idea of consensus actually means that everybody agrees and everybody sort of signed off on these ideas. And that's something that is great to strive for, but it's not necessarily realistic when you get to more diversified, more heterogeneous groups and larger groups of people. I think you would agree that it's probably impossible to get every single Canadian to vote for one person or to say that this one person should be in charge. And equally, it's fair to say that there's no way that you would get all of the people of Canada to agree that, yes, the plans that are made by our leaders have met all my needs, have addressed all of my concerns, and that I agree that this person should be in a leadership position and should be looking out for me. A consensus is not going to happen in some case like that, or if you're electing a leader of a province or of a city or anything, it's not realistic. However, the idea of consensus and the way it's used in the Grand Council of Chiefs and in individual tribes and leadership is a great message, and it's based. It's not based on time, which is a really important thing. People have the opportunity to think and reflect, and there's time set aside for people to everybody to have a chance to voice their opinions and let the leadership know about concerns and the needs, and an ability to work together using reason and logic and togetherness and discussion to come to some sort of agreement that everybody agrees is the best approach that we have to meet everybody's needs. And that is a worthy thing to strive for. And a lot of what you're going to read about the Iroquoian Confederacy and the nations that meet, and just using them sort of as an example of an Indigenous perspective, although in that part of the land, shows you a different perspective than what we've been reading about in the history of leadership and governing nations in Western Europe. So it's very important. I do want to encourage you to maybe read the assignments first. I usually do this as a student, when I'm doing my own classes or whatnot. I usually go and look at the assessments and give myself sort of a general idea of what it is that I need to be learning from the learning materials. And then when I go back to the readings or to the videos or whatnot, I have an idea of what I'm looking for. So just as a general sort of progress or way to progress through each unit, it's never a bad idea to go look at the assessments so that you've got a little list of things either in your mind or on a little piece of paper of things that you're looking for as you're going through. And it just helps you to sort of focus on the important parts of each of the materials, learning materials, whether it be written or whether it be you know, an audiovisual thing or something like that. Okay, so now the thing I wanted to do after just introducing this this perspective is just I remembered a video from, you know, 20 plus, I'm assuming, years ago, and I wanted to talk just a little bit about the video. It's starring a wonderful Canadian or Saskatchewanian actor named Gordon Tatusis, who unfortunately is no longer with us. He was born on the Poundmaker Reserve in Saskatchewan, and is just a very, very well-respected Canadian artist and actor. Has done multiple feature-length films in Canada, the US, and TV all over the place. And one of the things that I had mentioned before when the camera was apparently off is that I watched North of 60, which is a CBC documentary based on a northern community in Alberta, Dene community in Alberta, and goes through the social issues, social structure, leadership, decision making, and basically just day-to-day life in a northern Dene community that's relatively inaccessible. You know, most people are get there by plane. It's a drama. It's not based on a specific group, but it does introduce so many important Indigenous perspectives and learnings that I wish I had taken more advantage of when I was younger. It's a show that was started in like the earlier mid 90s, and it was done by the end of the millennium there. But as I go back as an adult and watched it again, it amazed me how much wonderful information and learning and perspective there was in the series North of 60. A lot of the things that they're talking about that have episodes based around are things that most Canadians are only really learning about now or in the last 10 years. And it's clear that there was a fair amount of Indigenous perspective on the production end of the show in order to make sure that these viewpoints were included in the episodes and were given the accuracy and respect they deserve. Now, I'm no expert, but a lot of the things that I'm finding as I go back and watch the series again as an adult is, hey, we were really talking about these things 25 years ago and years before that, but most people just weren't exposed to it. I wish I'd had somebody in my life that had kind of sat me down and say, watch this. It's not all 100% accurate, but it's important. You know, discussing things like Indigenous leadership and the social structures, matrilineal lineage, matrilineal input into the leadership of Indigenous groups in northern prairies, as well as things like residential schooling and the impacts of that long term and education. There's so much stuff that I looked at now where I'm like, oh my God, I could have been learning all this 25 years ago. But back then, I really just watched it kind of for pure entertainment value and didn't really take as many of the messages out of it as I should have. So it's kind of hard to find. It's not easily findable on YouTube or any other streaming services. But if you have cable, the APTN, the Aboriginal People's Television Network, streams the shows, and there's episodes just about every day. I just recorded them all and tried to watch them from season 1, episode 1, all the way through, and I really, really enjoyed it. So do yourself a favor, if you've got cable and if you've got APTN, just watch a couple episodes, see what you think. In any case, this Heritage Minute here, the actor Gordon Tatusis, again, was an amazing, amazing man. And he played a really bad guy on the show, but in real life, apparently, he was just the nicest, kindest, most wonderful person in the world. But he played kind of a scary bad guy on the show. But it made me think back about this Heritage Minute that I remembered that is directly related to Peacemaker and matches up so well with what you're going to see in the text and whatnot. So I thought it might be worth it just to show that really quickly here. So this is Gordon Tatusis in a Heritage Minute, a uniquely Canadian.
Represents our
What kind of tree is it, Judah?
tree of great peace. The peacemaker gave the great laws of peace to the Iroquois in the dark times many years ago. Hiawatha spoke for the peacemaker.
You chiefs have brought ruin and despair to your children through war. We must fling this burning demon into the underground river to be carried away forever. Peace now. Peace. And the power of the great peace drove the evil from them.
aren't you?
So I remembered that from my youth and fondly, and it was nice to see that it matched up so nicely with the first reading that we do in there. It kind of sets the basis for our focus for this Unit 5 on a more Indigenous perspective on leadership and consensus and how society is and should be structured with regard to that particular viewpoint. Okay, so I'm sorry that you lost about 15 or 20 minutes of content today, and I kind of rushed through it a little bit, but I will be back tomorrow with that open sort of one-on-one time, and happy to meet with anybody about anything that you want a little assistance with, and just keep posted on the course materials, and don't hesitate to reach out. So I'm sorry I don't have time for a Q&A right now because I'm running over time in my other session, thanks to my own incompetence with the video here, but. I wish you well. I'm going to sign off now. And again, just shoot me an email if you want some individual help, and we'll arrange that for sure. But thanks so much for coming today. I appreciate it.